And good evening, everybody. It is the Safety and the Sportswriter show with Knoxville Nate and Big Joe. We are back on the 29th of July. My God, this summer is just flying by. Tonight, we got Bryson Rosser coming in to join us, a successful uh, high school football coach who won back-to-back state championships and is now the assistant AD up in Belmont School in New England, producing and helping other athletes get on with their careers. And these careers are becoming more and more profitable at the college level, it seems. A lot of things going on there. Bryce Young apparently approaching, excuse me, $1 million already, along with a bunch of others. We don't know how many others are on the cusp of being signed. So we have that going on. We have Aaron Rodgers, surprise, 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 in camp and supporting Simone Biles. I'm sure that makes her heart go great because he's had such a hard life that I'm glad he came out and spoke in favor of Simone Biles. But we have that going on. We got a lot of baseball trades. We got NBA trades to talk about. We got a lot to talk about tonight with the football camps opening. And, of course, we're going to have to spend a lot of time talking about how the Texas and Oklahoma moving to the SEC is going to change the landscape of NCAA football. Nate, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. And, we were talking about college athletes getting paid. Well, one of the things I wanted to talk to Bryson about tonight was, how this affects high school athletes, because there's already been talk for the number one player in the country who's already committed and signed to play with Ohio State, Quinn Ewers out of Dallas, who's going to possibly, and it's growing more and more like it's going to happen every day, he's going to skip his senior season and go ahead and graduate early and go ahead and get on campus as fast as he can so we can start getting money, because apparently the Texas did not adopt the NIL rules. And so at least as far as high school players go, so they're not allowed to make money off their name, image, and likeness. And, the word is he's going to forego his senior year in high school football. And it's kind of like, wait a second, how good is this guy? I mean, I know he's good, but is he so good that he doesn't even need to play another year of high school football to be ready to play at Ohio State? I mean, that blows my mind. And, I understand I think the precedent has been set because, for example, Spencer Rattler, he got suspended and didn't play his senior year almost the entire year. And other guys have gotten hurt. Other guys sat out last year due to COVID. And, I think it has a little to do with money. I think it also has to do with injury and not wanting to get hurt and wanting to be able to start right away in college. So very interesting how this is all playing out. And the trickle-down effect is going to be very interesting to see how that works.
Well, this is where it's becoming really crazy, and I hate to use this analogy, but it kind of reminds me of horse racing, where they don't let the horse race for fear he'll get injured because of his stud fees. You know what I mean? It's kind of, for a bad analogy, there's nothing close to it that I can think about, because in every other sport, if you don't play, how can you get paid? I mean, and it's bad enough, and we're going to talk to Bryson, and I hate to put him on the spot, but places like Belmont, prep schools, the post-grad play where they can do post-grad playing and stuff like that, already high schools, at least in this area, are losing a lot of athletes. They're moving out of state. They're going to these special places that cater to football players, basketball players, hockey players, baseball players. So already the high school game around here is suffering. I know down south it's a different game. It's more like a religion down there. It always has been a bigger thing. But at least up here, it's bad. Now, with money getting involved, you might start to see it really trickle down and hurt the high school game. And it is going to be, it's going to be crazy.
Oh, it's already going on down here, too. Kids are switching high schools all the time, just depending on playing time, or, they're moving around for various reasons. But that's another thing I want to talk to Bryson about is, what his thoughts are on these kids, essentially being one and done players. And as you know, and everyone who listens to our show knows, I'm a huge fan of my alma mater, Knoxville Catholic High School. And, we've done it in the past. We got Tyler Barron, who was playing at Ensworth in Nashville, and we got him to come and play for us for a year. And, it rubbed some people the wrong way. I mean, that's just the facts about it. Some people didn't like it that we were essentially renting players for a season.
We had a kid in Fairfield County. His father was a former pro football player. His mother worked for ESPN. He was a quarterback, came in, played for the local high school, who was one of the most successful programs in the state. He came in, but the day after he won the championship, he transferred back out to California. He had tried to go and play at that, I forget the name of the high school out there that produced where Joe Montana's kids went, and all the kids went. Yeah. And he couldn't start out there. They went down to Florida. He couldn't start. So they came up to the most successful program in Connecticut. His mother was able to get a job with ESPN or a temporary assignment. His father moved his business here to the state, and they were here from September to December, and then gone forever. So I mean, it's something that goes on. I mean, we had another kid. He went out. His mother moved out to California. He played for USC. He was a quarterback for about 15 minutes out there under Pete Carroll. And, it's just, I don't know. It's like I was saying, we've been talking about this coming up. I'm not a big proponent of this pay. I don't mind. I understand if you're a star to go and somebody wants to pay you to appear places and stuff like that, and you want to pick up $5,000 doing that, fine. But the genie's out of this bottle now, and now it's just never going to stop. It's just it's gone. The college game we know is gone, and it's going to be. I don't know if you saw David Shaw's comments this week about Nick Saban, but he was at the Pac-12. And they asked about Nick Saban bragging about Bryce Young making 7 figures. And he goes, well, that's Nick Saban. He's the smartest guy in the room. And, it's a great recruiting tool, but that's Alabama money. That's not the rest of the country money. And in a way, it's true. Other universities aren't going to do what Alabama does. And, I thought the idea is to make the NCAA more competitive, and now it's becoming more and more closed, and it's going to keep getting closed. And this Oklahoma Texas thing, like we just talked about before we come in here, I don't see how it helps either of those places. I don't see.
Well, it's very interesting as far as the Oklahoma Texas thing goes, because they're not really doing it for money. They already have tons of money. I mean, Oklahoma wins the conference every year. They're on national television almost every game. They've got a contract with Fox, in the Big 12, and they're making tons of cash. So I don't really get that. Texas has their own network, that televises all the university's events, and they get all the money from it. So I don't really understand, what the reasoning is.
Where does it help you recruit? You're already a national known power. If you're Oklahoma, if you're Texas, you can recruit from any state in the United States. Texas should own every player in Texas. Oklahoma does a great job in California, Texas, all across the West. They do well in recruiting. So I don't see it helping recruiting either. I mean, I don't get this whole.
Well, and there was a letter that came out yesterday where essentially the Big 12 commissioner wrote a letter to ESPN, and the lawyers for the Big 12, got involved, saying that ESPN is behind this, and that they're trying to basically get rid of the Big 12 conference because they're not playing ball with ESPN. The Big 12 has a deal with Fox, just like the Big 10 does, and so they're ESPN's essentially trying to get rid of anybody that's not aligned with their network. And that may be true. I don't know, but
Could
you
be.
know, it is the one thing that I will say about this that I know for a fact is that if Oklahoma leaves and Texas leaves, the Big 12 is gone. I mean, the
Right.
Big 12 is dust. There's nothing really left to deal with for that conference, and you know, it's sad to me because that's been a very, you know, the conference has changed. You know, it was the Big Eight, it was the Southwest Conference, now it's the Big 12, but it's always been around, and it's always had that core of teams there. You know, mainly Texas and Oklahoma, and with them leaving, it ruins that conference and basically spells the end of it.
And when they used to have, when Nebraska used to be a power, Nebraska, Oklahoma was as good as it gets. And that Thanksgiving Day rivalry was something everybody tuned into. So, I mean, I don't know. There's some things being flaunted. I saw this the other day. This one article that came out about having a top 30 mega conference. I'm kind of in favor of it because it covers most of the major schools, but it brings in schools and leaves out other traditional powers. They take Cincy, University of Central Florida, Boise State into the Big 30. Well, I'm sorry, but why not? They're leaving out Northwestern. They're leaving out Colorado. They're leaving out other teams that have a more legendary status than the University of Central Florida. When Scott Frost was there, yeah, they were starting to get some momentum, but still, I mean, I don't put them up on a level of a Northwestern or an Illinois or a Big Ten team that's been around forever. Purdue. I mean, I'm sorry. It just I don't know. I just look at these things and I just realize that the money that's being thrown around now. I used to think that ESPN was the greatest thing that happened to sports because I thought I could see my sports every day, but the money and the power they wield over these leagues, whether it be pros down through the Olympics, down through the NCAA, is ridiculous, and now it's kind of ruining it for everybody.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of ESPN. I feel like they pull politics into it. They try and control all of the sports message. And, it's not something that I care to watch. And unfortunately, I have to sometimes because they do own a lot of content. But what people don't realize is ESPN isn't a single entity. ESPN is owned by the same corporation that owns ABC, that owns, multiple other multinational corporations. And it's just it blows me away that this, our country is supposed to have a, legality against monopolies, but in reality, we don't. And, it's almost like everything is owned by a monopoly anymore. And it kind of pushes the little guy out. And that's what bothers me. But, we'll see what happens. I think this is the beginning of the end for the conferences anyway.
Yeah.
I think they're going to, realign and break these conferences down and start over probably. I mean, I know the SEC wants to keep going and wants to be probably their own mega conference, and then the other ones will have to realign around that, and that's possible. That's possible, I guess. But the game as we know it is essentially over, and there's going to be a lot more change to come, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it is scary because what are we going to have coming down the line? I mean, already in the past decade, we've been whittled down to maybe a handful of teams every year that really have a chance in NCAA football to compete, and this isn't going to change it. It's not going to help it. You're not. Gonna, I mean, every year you hope for that story, and maybe that becomes from my sports writing background, is you want the story of the underdog who rises up and competes against and maybe knocks off the big guy. But now it's become, like Major League Baseball. What have we seen this week? Who are making the big moves? San Diego, who's in first place. The Yankees, who are third place, trying to get back into the race, but they've got all the money. And meanwhile, the have-nots are getting rid of the only talent they have. And those poor cities like Seattle and, the Cubs who are having a bad year, their fans are going to sit there and go, well, why do I want to go to the game?
Yeah, well, I think Yankees fans are saying that right now. I don't know if you saw what happened today.
Yeah.
But Garrett Cole was on the mound and got pounded. And there was a slaughter down in Tampa today as the Yankees went down 14-0 to the Tampa Bay Rays. And this just goes to show you once again, you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have a team that plays together and that has one goal and that has leaders, you can lose to anybody. And Tampa Bay has proven that year after year. They've got a better record than the Yankees. They kick their ass every time they play. And it was on display again with the Yankees ace, $300 million man on the mound. They go down 14-0. That's pretty embarrassing if you ask me. I
mean, the embarrassing thing, and nothing against Garrett Cole personally. God bless anybody can get more money he can, but anybody who pays $300 million for a guy who's won 19 games once and 20 games once in his career and was not the ace on the staff with Houston. And also, the Yankee fans and the Yankee players are the first ones yelling about Houston cheating. Well, do you think that cheating didn't help Garrett Cole a little bit when he was with Houston? You think maybe he was involved a little bit in that? I mean, no, he didn't notice the banging of the garbage cans, and now we know that the sticky stuff helped him. So, I mean, my feelings about the Yankees. Any bad things that happen to them, I'm for. But I mean, it's just when you see Major League Baseball and the fact that there's no salary cap, there's no control over this. There's no salary cap in NCAA either. There's nothing that can keep, and it's already bad enough that you and I have discussed this at length. My astonishment that good players would go and wait their turn on the bench for Alabama in the hopes of taking over rather than going to a lesser university and actually playing. Because to me, if you want to get on the next level, you got to play. If they never discover you, and you know as well as I do, you know better than I do because you're closer to the situation. Yeah, you can sit there and Saban will say your turn's going to come, but at the same time, he's recruiting somebody behind you who might be just a little bit better and jumps past you.
Yeah, ask Jalen Hurts about that. You know, I mean, he came in and he started as a freshman and took somebody else's job and was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then all of a sudden, here comes Tua, and Tua Tagovailoa comes and takes Jalen Hurts' job. So, that's the way it is. But these kids, in my opinion, they want to go and they want to play at the best schools. They don't mind if they have to sit a little bit, but they all believe in themselves, in my opinion, and they feel like they're going to play no matter what. And they see these teams making it to the college football playoff every year, and they want to be a part of that. And as me and you have discussed at length also on this show, it seems to be the same teams in that Final Four almost every year. Does it not?
Yes, it does. And we have Bryson Rosser right now in our bullpen. We're going to bring him in because I think he has a lot to bring to this conversation. So let me tag him in. Bryson, you there? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah, great. Hey, thank you for coming on. Good to have you.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Our big thing right now we're talking about is this new money that's floating around in college football and how it's affecting, it seems to be trickling down even into high school. Conferences are blowing up. When you see this, first of all, an overview, what do you think about what's going on?
It's just a different monster, man. It's different times from even, when I was, being recruited or playing college ball, which feels forever ago. But man, I mean, it's a new monster, and, things are changing with the times, and, I'm kind of torn in between it, in a way. It's like, man, I wish we had, a little bit of that, when I was playing, but again, things have changed, times have changed. sports sells, makes money in all different ways. So, in a way, I'm kind of glad these guys get a chance to, kind of make some profit off their likeness. But I think there's not enough barriers to it. So it's really about to get out of hand. That situation that you hear about with, just like recruits right now in high school and certain guys in school and guys haven't been named starters yet and having like 7-figure. I mean, it's ridiculous, man. So I'm kind of split down the middle on it, but I think it only gets worse from here, unfortunately.
Yeah. No, hey, Coach, first off, thanks so much for coming on the show. I'm a big fan. I saw what you did at Central and saw you build that program up and win 2 state championships in a row. And I was very impressed with what you did there. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show, because I know you know what it takes to be a winner. And, we got some questions for you about, you coached at the high school level, and there's kids now like Quinn Ewers, who is the #1 recruit for next year. He's already committed to Ohio State. And he's talking about sitting out his senior year and, not playing his final year of high school football. And as a coach, as you were a coach, how does that make you feel?
Yeah, and see, that's where like the other side of it, of me being torn, it's really unfortunate that it's starting to get to that point, because that young man has, granted he has worked his entire, short career up until this point to have this opportunity, but what about his teammates? The guys that are right there with him, the blood, sweat, and tears, those Friday nights you can't get back, and when they're gone, they're gone. So it's unfortunate that he's even thinking to that aspect. But like I said, this is a new monster, man, and I think, this is where I think it only gets worse from here. I mean, you have kids talking about sitting out their senior year of high school to think about money that can be made. And we all know football is a game in which it can be taken from you at any point in time. So I just hate that that's becoming valued over the experiences, the stories, the relationships, and everything else.
And, how for me, you as a player and as a coach, you've seen these kids up front, up close and personal. I covered a lot of the high school players around here in Southern Connecticut, and I saw players that were good football players, maybe undersized. I also saw the guys that were, I like to say, the workout warriors that every college looked at and said, "Oh my God, the guy can run, a 4.3 40. He can bench press. He can do this. I see him in the gym, and I can make him into something at the next level." But football is a different sport. You're either a football player or you're not a football player. And I think you have to play those games, especially in high school when you're developing, to see if you really are a football player and you have that desire. As Bill Parcells used to say, when you find yourself standing on the outside of the pile, you don't want to be a football player anymore.
Yeah, there's so much that goes into it. And it's one of the great things that I love about, being a high school coach is those experiences you can never take back from kids. And we know the percentages of getting to college football but I don't think kids realize that. I think they're starting to see money other than opportunity. And, again, it's creating an unbalanced platform, which unfortunately every kid's not going to have the opportunity to, decide if they get to do their senior year or not. And, one other quick note about you guys and being on the show, I feel pretty good on any angle about the questions, being a Northeast guy, but then spending almost half my life in the South and now being back in the Northeast. So I feel good, Big Joe, I can represent the region in which you're in. And then Nate, I was down in that area for a while. Hopefully you don't bring up anything about any games we had against Catholic.
Yeah,
I think the numbers were not in our favor, but I think we won one of them that counted. So.
Yeah, I remember that one. I can't forget it, unfortunately.
But no, I am happy to be here with you guys and appreciate it. So
yeah, no, that's why we thought you'd be great on this show. You spent some time down here with me, and now you're up there with Big Joe. So, one other thing I wanted to ask you, Coach. At Catholic, we've had this happen, and it's starting to happen a lot more with, I don't know if you've seen the news that Walter Nolan, who's the #1 defensive lineman and the #3 prospect in the country, he's enrolled at Powell High School here in Knoxville now, and he's moved from Memphis. And last year, actually 2 years ago now, Catholic got Tyler Barron from Ensworth to come play for us. And now, as much as I'd love to have him, the guy had 27 tackles for loss, and over 100 tackles for us. So I loved having him, but it rubs some people the wrong way, having a kid, having the one and done, down in high school. And I want to get your thoughts on that. And, as a coach, how would you feel, having a kid come in who hasn't put in the work like some of the other kids have, and it's just there for 12 months?
Well, it's so tough, not only on the kid and the family to make that decision, but on the coach and the team as well. My job as a coach is to create a culture that embodies acceptance for everyone, and then somehow, some way we could bring it all together and have some fun times on Friday night. So, it's tough. I mean, who would not want a player of that caliber? I think I'm lucky that I didn't have to go against Tyler Barron or definitely not have to go against Walter Nolan. But, we did go against guys essentially like Cade Mays and Amari Rogers, who were guys that were there a lot longer. But, it's really tough to consider. It's not even a 12-month process if you think about it, because, the kid usually gets in there sometime in the summer and it becomes really like a 5-month project. Like, you just get through the season and then the kid heads off to school somewhere. So I can see it really tough on schools, coaches, and definitely the players, because the culture, you try so hard, you work day in and day out to have a culture that is built around, having what you have. And then you have a kid of that caliber come in, and though he is an unbelievable talent, you hope that it doesn't create, kind of a wave of that, because then it creates inconsistencies in your culture, your expectations. And then, the kids that were there, it may take away from their drive if someone's going to come in and take their job every year.
How about, you brought up the coaches, and I'll tell you, around here especially, we've lost a lot of coaches because parents have been kind of crazy about their kids not starting, about their kids not playing enough. You're keeping my kid from having a scholarship. Now you got a price tag on top of that. For a coach, and especially people don't understand, the high school coach in America, for the most part, does it out of love. They don't get a lot of money. They usually have to have full-time jobs on the side. They're taken away from their families. They don't get to spend a lot of time with their families. And I don't care what sport it is. It's not that you're if you're a football coach, it's like 9-10 months a year. It's not even, maybe even 12. And it's hard enough on these coaches without this price tag coming on. How do you see this hitting these coaches? Are we going to lose a lot of good coaches because of this?
Yeah, I think you see a lot of articles coming out recently about that, about guys really considering their time. And I know Nate has seen, up close and personal, through like my social media, the amount of time that had to be put in at Central over a matter of 5 years. It became a 12-month job if you want the right results and you want the right things to happen for your kids. Unfortunately, I can see that happening, especially in, the region we're in right now. Big Joe, there are some questions that arrive, and I've yet to coach. I haven't coached a season in 2 years, right? So I moved up here last year to Boston, Massachusetts. I'm at a private school, Belmont Hill, right now, and I'm looking forward to having a football season. But you definitely hear the conversation, not just guys up here, but everywhere around the nation, but definitely in this region. You can say like, hey, is it really worth it? Is it really worth the time, effort, energy, commitment? Because there's so much that goes into it rather than just being a coach. And it's unfortunate because coaches don't ever get their due diligence. And parents and players sometimes don't see the work that goes in, and how much of an advocate, how much of a teacher, really how much of a person coaches really are. Yeah. After doing all the job that you do, spend all day at school or a job and then come coach and advocate for other people's kids and then go home and still have to take care of your own household is a big deal. So I wish coaches got a little bit more respect for the job they actually have done, but I definitely see it trending in the wrong direction right now, especially in different parts of the country.
And elaborate on that for us, Coach. You are now an administrator. Do you miss coaching? Do you think you'll ever go back to it? Or are you going to stay in the administration? What's your feelings?
So I am going to be coaching this year. We didn't have a season last year because of COVID, which was really rough for me to watch Knoxville football going on. And, my Bobcats made it all the way to the quarterfinals, almost got back to the big game with my guy, Nick Craney, down there right now. But yeah, we just didn't have a season this year. Okay. But this upcoming season, I'll still be in administration. I'm associate director of athletics, and I'll be serving in capacity of assistant head coach and offensive coordinator at the school that I'm at. So
Nice.
just counting down the time to get it going. It's a little bit different in the Northeast than it is in the South. So I'm just waiting to get the green light for us to start camp here in the middle of August.
Now, does Belmont, do you guys compete in the NEPSAC or the NEPSAC Bowl series up here? Is that where your championship games are?
Yes. It's also part of the ISL. So it's that independent school league, which is also part of NEPSAC. So, yeah.
When we talk about the money in the big time sports, one thing I'm very interested in this year is the Ivy League, because they lost all of last year, to see how that traditional league is going to come back. Do you think any of the money is going to trickle into the Ivy League, or they're going to be able to quote unquote keep the romantic status of the college, the student athlete going?
That's going to be, yeah. So I agree. That's going to be interesting. I mean, I think money trickles down in any crevice that it can find, whether it's change or whether it's dollars. So
it's going to be over here, Coach.
Hey, me too. But I think it always trickles down in some way, shape, or form, Big Joe. It may take a little bit longer. I can definitely see some rules being in place per conference about how this happens, which is why I'm saying I think there needs to be more barriers on it. I mean, there's no way in the world an SEC kid, an Ivy League kid can bring in the same, NIL. I mean, it may be possible, but again, like it all depends how that money finds its way to it. But no, the Ivy League is known for being prestigious in a lot of different ways, and not just how their schools are ran, but how their athletics are ran. So I can see, their conference maybe having some rules in play to it. And, they may not get on the boat right away, but like I said, I think money trickles down anywhere it can find it, no matter what. So,
yeah. And hey, some of the smaller schools are, starting to get more attention. For example, school, very well, Tennessee State has one of my boys from Buckeye Country, Eddie George, coming to be the head coach. And, last year Catholic played Trinity Christian School from Dallas, which Dion was coaching. And to be honest, I kind of thought maybe it was a little gimmick that Dion was just, coaching his son. But after I watched them play, I was very, very impressed with Dion and the way that he coached and the way that he coached his son. And, I'm hoping that, they can bring the spotlight into these programs where they're at. I just want to get your thoughts on, Eddie George taking over at Tennessee State and Dion taking over down at Jackson. And, what you think those guys can do for those programs?
Well, I think everything that they're doing right now is what they're supposed to do, with the start. And it's bring more exposure, not just to Tennessee State and the Ohio Valley Conference, but Jackson State and the SWAC or the MEAC. The first part is get that exposure. I can't tell you, when I was playing to be in Nashville, and Nashville is such a, it's such an unbelievable city, but it's such a college town, right? And like Tennessee State, and I say this protected. My wife is a Vanderbilt alum, but Tennessee State and Vanderbilt are on two totally different levels, right? You had what they call 1AA and 1A. You had now FCS and FBS. You can imagine in this day and age, some of that NIL stuff being tricky from SEC to Ohio Valley Conference. So I believe those coaches bring more exposure. Also believe they bring more positive exposure to bring more people in to see what the campus is like. Going to Tennessee State was one of the best experiences of my life, being a New Jersey guy. Never thought I would end up that far away from home to go to school, and ended up being not just a place, but a state where I ended up having, some of the best parts of my young career so far. So I think what those guys are doing right now, bringing great exposure. And I think from there, they continue to use their experience, their brand, their connections to put those guys on TV to be seen. There's so many great players that come through both of those schools, and so many more in those conferences, that they just need the opportunity to be seen. I love what they're trying to do as far as getting more of like an HBCU draft, or get more guys in the NFL draft, get more guys seeing exposure, because we all know if you can play, they're going to find you. I just know there's such a big deal of like with that exposure. And I think that's something that they both can bring to it. I'm excited about Eddie George and what he can do to it. His staff is amazing. Yeah. And every head coach knows it's all about the staff that you have and how they can coach the guys that you have. So that's the part that I'm excited about. hopefully I get a chance to see those guys play in person, but I'll definitely be watching from a distance.
Yeah, I just think it's cool how, they're not, Eddie isn't just donating money, or just, trying to make a difference, for these schools from afar. He's getting involved and taking the role, taking it head on. And I just think that's pretty cool. And I think that's a great step in the right direction for those guys and those programs.
Yeah.
And I've always been a big proponent of these guys, these former athletes going in and going back out into the community. And if you can do it at the high school level, the colleges, especially the smaller colleges, that's great, because the better they can bring a better perspective than most of these coaches who've never played in the NFL, or and like you said, they bring a lot of good attention. When you talk to these kids, Bryson, when they come in, coach, to talk to you at Belmont, of course, most of us aren't used to the prep school mentality of these kids. What are the kind of things they're looking for when they come and they talk to you and say, Coach, this is why I'm here? Or what's the athlete feedback? What is he talking to you about?
Well, most kids, if you decide to play any sport on a high school level, you obviously have some thought of playing it on the next level, which is the college level. So kids always want the opportunity and want to know that there has somebody that has their vested interest as they do as well. As a coach, the second part of it is, you can't, most of us get there on some talent, but you do have to have some grades as well. So it's making sure like you have the best plan in place for them to continue on. Like I said before, football doesn't last forever. We're always one play away. But one thing that's big, especially at Belmont Hill, is such the couple of athletics and academics and how it's brought together. It's a smaller school, enrollment of only about 475 students. But we ask our kids to play multiple sports, have multiple experiences, and be multiple teammates and team members of different of organizations, because again, you just never know. The role player on the lacrosse team may be the superstar on a football team, or superstar on a football team may be a role player on a hockey team. So one thing that we do that I love, and it's one reason why I wanted to be a part of it, is because we give kids an opportunity to experience different things, because you just never know where opportunity comes from to the next level. And if kids truly want to play on the next level, for myself as a coach and as coaches all around the country, we try to find the best area for them. It may not always be the Big Ten, the SEC, the Pac-12. Sometimes it's, smaller D2, D3, NAIA schools, just to give them the opportunity to see that, because the numbers are never in student athletes' favor, and they don't know that until they hit their junior or senior year.
Yeah, no, I know that for a fact, because I played small college ball up in Ohio at a Division III school at Ohio Wesleyan. And to be honest, I would have known nothing about it if it weren't for my own family. My uncle played at Ohio Wesleyan, and he came down and watched me play and was like, you're not going to play for the Buckeyes or Tennessee or whatever, but he's like, you could continue playing if you want to. And I had no idea. I'm not blaming my coach or anything like that. I'm just saying that, my uncle opened my eyes to it, and I sent some tape up there, and they invited me up for a meeting, and then the rest is history. But I would like to know how it's changed. How can kids now find out about those other opportunities and playing at those smaller schools, whereas in the past they kind of had to figure it out for themselves, possibly, or have a family member tell them about a school maybe they went to. What's the best way to open their eyes to these other programs?
The first and foremost is something, Big Joe, we were talking about, is another thing coaches don't get a lot of credit for is recruiting. When that season's over with and the kids go on to other sports and everyone's worrying about vacation and everything else, like, coaches are networking and working on recruiting to get those kids the best possible situation. So I think having that conversation, Nate, is one of the best things they could do with their coach. Hey, coach, granted, if I am given the opportunity, if there is somewhere that I could play, please help me find it. That's the first thing you do. And then obviously we all know, getting through this COVID thing, unfortunately, is Google. There's nothing wrong with looking at a place that may have, a major that you may want to go into, whether it's economics, whether it's athletic administration, so on and so forth, a region of the country that you may want to go to that you may not have visited. There's so many virtual visits you can do. Funny story for me, when I was in New Jersey, I was getting recruited by Tennessee State. Like I said before, I didn't think I wanted to go that far, right? So those guys were calling and they were recruiting, and we often avoided those phone calls, which I know sounds a little crazy, but it's a little weird going from New Jersey to Nashville. And it wasn't until I went and visited the place where I was like, this is somewhere where I can survive, not only as an athlete, but as a student and as a person. And it became my second home. And like I said, my career branched off from there. So I think having that conversation is big, because coaches are the biggest advocate in everything that they do. They serve so many hats: coach, father figure, brother figure, mentor, psychologist, teacher. There's so many things that go into it in coaching, and that's why I hope that trend doesn't continue to go the way it's going. I just think, I know obviously I always want coaches to get paid more money, but if coaches just got a little bit more thank yous for the people they actually work for, a couple of thank you notes from parents, kids, community, coaches, administration. Right now we're our best support system. Coaches supporting coaches is what keeps them going. So that's the biggest advocate right now for kids, any kid wanting to play on the next level.
I'm glad you talked too about playing more than one sport. I think that is important, and all the good coaches I've talked to are real big supporters of that. I say, it helps with the health of, when you're talking about the muscle groups and things like that, not overusing a muscle group, less injuries. So a lot of good things happen because of that. One thing around here I find, and I don't know if you find it up at Belmont or found it throughout your coaching, is a lot of parents will employ private coaches, especially in baseball, especially for quarterbacks. They put them with these special guys, the specialists who supposedly teaching the passing game, make them a better pitcher. I think it's a double-edged sword, because now you have two coaches who might be telling totally different things, especially when you talk about an arm that's such a fragile part of your body, Tommy John surgery and stuff like that. What do you think about the private coaches working against or with the coaches in high school?
I think it could be an asset in a lot of different ways. Now, when I was at Central for 5 years there, if there was ever a kid going to, a trainer or a coach, I just wanted to know who the guy was. Yeah. And make sure I talk. And, I didn't want it to be a secret. If someone wants to provide extra resources and opportunities for their, young man or young woman to be a better athlete, it's not my call to say, no, you can't do that. Now, I may not agree with it, but if that's going to be something that's going to happen, I just want to know that that person has your best interest at heart. If you're working out with the school 3 times a week, I want your trainer to know that you probably shouldn't work out the other 4 days with your trainer. If we're throwing 2 days a week, throwing another 2 days with the trainer, it may be okay if you're working on, additional routes to what we're doing. Now, I also know I'm speaking from like a perfect world, right? Because the trainers sometimes don't want nothing to do with the schools at all. But I think there's a way that if you could mend that relationship, and again, the more people that are on the same page, the more successful the kid will be, right? So like if the parent, the trainer, and maybe one of the coaches or position coaches on the page and say, hey, this is what we want to improve on within the next year. Let's put a plan together that we all agree to. Then I think it helps avoid injuries, overuse, so on and so forth. I've met a bunch of kids that were in a sport in their high school and still had a trainer for another sport. And it worked out fine because everybody's on the same page. And I've also seen some to where it had diminished returns in both sports. And then the kid ends up hurt and, misses opportunities all over the place. So, I do agree. It's a double-edged sword. Communication makes the world go around. If communication was great between the right entities, then it can all be better for the student athlete, which ultimately should be the goal for everybody.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more on that. That's one of the other reasons that I was able to play ball was I started working out with Charlie Patrone here in Knoxville, who's trained a bunch of guys. And to be honest, I'm not that big now, but before I started working out with him, I was a $150 wet and wearing boots. So, he really helped my, career be able to expand into the college ranks. And, there was pushback from the school at that time, working out with him. And I didn't really understand it. But now I do, because I'm old, and I see where, allegiances lie. And, there wasn't that communication. I think if the coach had met Charlie and, got to know him and talk to him, I think he would have been all for it. So I agree with you. And, Coach, I just want to say thank you for coming on with us tonight. I got one more question for you before we let you go. Just talking about this, before you came on, we were talking about this realignment and, how much college football is changing, seeing it from where you are. What do you think is going to happen? I mean, what do you see happening with college football? I mean, obviously, Oklahoma and Texas are trying to leave and possibly go to the SEC. Do you see these mega conferences being formed, and how do you think it'll affect college football as a whole?
Yeah, I think I see it going to mega conferences. Hopefully it expands the playoff system a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think I keep wanting to say FCS because that's how it is to me. And I think the FCS playoff system is one of the best.
Yeah.
Wish I still got a chance to even get into the dance when I was at Tennessee State, but I feel like it eventually gives you a realistic view of who the best is. I think they take the champions from each conference, possibly co-champs, and then put them in there and have them bite it out all over the country. But I think it's trending towards mega conferences. I'm not sure the postseason, how that's gonna, affect it. Obviously, I think they should expand the playoff system a little bit more. But again, money talks, man. And my quote of the night is, if there's a crevice, money's gonna find it. So it's gonna be interesting to see how these mega conferences continue to make money, and then how ultimately it all pans out from a football aspect. I did want to say one thing, Nate. I don't think we've talked about this before, but I have a god brother, Joshua Perry.
Yeah.
You may know that name from
Columbus,
Ohio State.
Oh, yeah. Yes. He played on the national championship team, and he still works in
with
Columbus.
The Big Ten.
How's he? How do you know him?
He's my godbrother. So his dad is my godfather. Yeah, best family friends. I actually was at the national championship run.
Wow.
I was at the Big Ten championship. I was in New Orleans when they beat Bama, and I was definitely in Dallas when they beat Oregon. So I wanted to make sure I threw that out there to you, because that's my boy right there.
Heck yeah, man. I love it. He's a great player and an even better guy. And he does a lot of media in Columbus. So I go up there for games, and my family's up there. So I live in Tennessee, but like you, I've got connections up in the Midwest. So I get to go hear him on the radio. And I think he was on the post-game shows.
He's in the Big Ten network right now.
Yeah.
He just freed up a contract there. So that's awesome too.
Nice, man. That's great to hear.
Yeah, Coach, I can't thank you enough. Like Nate said, a little bit that I'm worried about with this NCAA stuff is, as a sports writer, you always root for that Cinderella team, and I don't see like the Northwesterns or your wife's Vanderbilt ever having a chance to really compete anymore, if at all, if they ever could. So that's what I see the downside of this, because the have-nots in the conferences are going to be even having lesser. So it's going to be.
I agree.
And so it's going to be tough with that. But unfortunately, we don't have control over that. I want to put one thing out there. We'd love to talk to you during the season when you start coaching. And if you have some players, maybe have them come on. We'll talk to them and give them a little press before they get on to the next level.
Man, I would appreciate it, man. I'm excited about this new opportunity. I probably need to talk to you a little bit more too, Joe, about just getting acclimated with this area and this region of football again. It's been a while since I've been back in the Northeast. So, yeah, I appreciate you guys, man. I was looking at episodes for the last couple of days, Nate, just seeing like, man, can I survive with these guys in the show? But it's been fun, man. It's been a blast, and always willing to sit down, talk sports, talk about kids, talk about coaches and the beauty of athletics and how it can impact this world.
You're welcome anytime.
Yeah, we loved having you on, Coach, and best of luck to you this season. We'll be following you, and like Joe said, hopefully you'll come back on and let us know how it's going.
For sure. Thank you, guys. Take care.
All right, have a great night.
Right. That was Bryson Rosser, a nice guy, good coach, and we'll be looking forward to him. I'd love to see him in the NEPSAC championships. That's always a fun time of year up here, because you get the guys from all over the country playing with those schools up there. That's where I got to see Silas Red and Kevin Pierre-Lewis and those guys when they were playing. So
yeah, no, I'm glad he's going to be up with you guys, but we're going to miss him around here, man. He took Central, which had some good teams in the past, but had never won a state championship. And Coach Rosser took them, and just completely turned that program around. They were a little bit down before he took over. And I was just sitting there watching one day, and I'm like, who is this coach? I'm like, what is he doing? I'm like, this doesn't even look like the same team. And they had a lot of the same kids from the year before he got there, but he took a team that, was having trouble competing and just completely turned them around and did a 180 with that program and had so much success. And, his players loved him. And, even me, who was cheering for the teams he was playing against, found myself cheering for him just because he was such a great guy and such a tremendous coach. So I'm really glad we got to bring him on tonight and get some of his insight, because not only is he a great man and a great coach, but he's also very, very smart and very articulate. So I thought he brought a lot to the table.
Yeah, and it's like I said before he came on, and we are at a tipping point in sports. The traditionalists like me, the guys who love sports like you and me both, and you've been a traditionalist too. Like you said, I don't know if we're going to recognize this game in 5 years. I really fear that the NCAA is not going to be the NCAA we grew up loving. It's going to be something that along the lines of, I don't know, maybe what they do with soccer over in the British Premier League, where you got 40 different levels, but only one anybody pays attention to is Premier League. And there's so much. I don't know. I'm just worried for the future of it.
Yeah, no, I understand your concerns, and I'm with you. I think college football as we know it is going to be gone, and that worries me, because ever since I was a little kid, I've always loved sports, but college football was the thing that I loved. I had this bulletin board, and people are going to make fun of me, but when I was a little kid, I had a bulletin board, and every year I would take the Sports Illustrated and I would cut out pictures of my favorite players, and I'd put them up, and then I'd follow their season and see how it went. And I loved the different conferences and the different teams, and watching my Buckeyes in the morning, and then watching Fresno State versus UCLA at night, and just seeing how different the conferences were and how different the football was in the different conferences. And with mega conferences, that stuff's going to go away. So that worries me, and that scares me. Change frightens everybody some of the time. So I think, it's just, I'm all for these kids getting money. I've always been a proponent of these, especially at, Tennessee, Alabama, Ohio State. These kids bring in so much cash, and I feel like they're entitled to some of it. But I don't want the game that I love to get ruined because of money and it being a money grab. So, like Coach Rosser said, it's I'm torn a little bit. So we'll see what happens. But I know this for 2021, we still got the Big Ten, we've still got the Big 12, still got the SEC. We're going to have a great season, and we're going to have a lot of fun watching it and talking about it.
Definitely. I'm looking forward to college football. I mean, I've been listening to Feinbaum all week, and if that can't get you down on football, nothing can.
Yeah, I don't listen to him. I don't listen to that guy because he drives me nuts. But I listen to about everything else, and I'm real excited. Camp is kicked off. These kids are already working hard and getting ready. And, I think it's going to be a really cool season. I'm hoping that, we're seeing these COVID numbers spike.
God. I know.
And it's freaking me out, because what I don't want is games getting canceled like they were last year. And what I don't want is, teams having to play without their starting quarterback. And, a team like my team, the Buckeyes, having a chance to, go back to the national championship game. And then all of a sudden, CJ Stroud, their quarterback is got COVID, or Chris Olave, their number one receiver, gets COVID. We battled through it last year, And, we almost lost a couple games because we were missing key guys. And, you say Tommy Tegea, our defensive tackle, not playing in the national championship game. Well, that wouldn't have made a difference. Well, probably not, because we got our butts kicked. But, when you don't have your full squad or you're missing a main guy, it just hurts the game, and it makes it less competitive, in my opinion. So all I'm saying, Rob, is that I hope that everybody gets to play and that everybody has their team at full strength. That's all that I meant, and that's all that I meant. And I can cheer for my team no matter what. And if they lose in the title game, that's better than losing 7 games like the Vols. So.
Well, the only thing I'll say, and I hate to say talking politics, and I'm not trying to be political, but I encourage people to get the shots. I got the shots. If anything else, it maybe not keep you from getting this new variant, but from what they say, it makes the variant less harsh, so you can get back. Maybe you don't have to be quarantined for 14 days. It's a regular flu, maybe. Listen to the scientists. Do that. Do what you got to do, because none of us want to have another summer like we had last summer. We're just starting to get back without the mask and stuff, and we want our sports to be back where they should be, with us in the stands, looking at them, cheering them on, and being at these events, not just watching them on our couches and wishing we were there. So that's the only thing I'll say about that.
Yeah, no, it's freaking me out. I mean, we've already had Lamar Jackson tested positive. I think it was yesterday or the day before. I can't remember which, but this is a guy who has already gotten the shot, and is one of the best players in the NFL. So, that worries me. That scares me, because if you recall last year, even in the NFL, we had games where teams had their whole position groups gone. Like the Denver Broncos, for example, didn't have a quarterback to play in that one particular game, and ran KJ Hamler out there. Because he was a quarterback in high school. And let me tell you, being a quarterback in high school and being a quarterback in the NFL are two completely different things. And, we all want to see, the competitiveness of the leagues play out on the field. And when you're missing entire position groups, that becomes very difficult to do.
It does, but injuries can happen too. I mean, the thing is everybody's got to keep their mind on the goal, which is to get back to normalcy, whatever it takes to get back to normalcy, and not up and down, make this political, whether you're red, blue, left, right, up, down, whatever you want to call it. Let's all get along. We all want the same things. We all want to see our sports. We all want to enjoy our sports. We all want to enjoy our lives. So let's not overreact either way. But hopefully, Lamar, this is a good test case, actually, because if he sits out a few days and it turns out that he's asymptomatic, or he's not gonna, be a problem to the rest of the team, and he can come right back, then the NFL knows how to go through it, and it may encourage you guys who haven't gotten a shot already to get the shot. So hopefully that happens.
Well, yeah, and that's that's what people are talking about a lot right now with the vaccinations in the NFL. They're talking about how, they want these players to be vaccinated, and it doesn't make sense for them not to do it. If you're in a position battle with another guy and you're duking it out every day in practice and say, I'm vaccinated and that player's not, who do you think the team's going to keep if these guys are equal? They're going to keep the guy that's got a less chance of either not getting the virus at all, or B, getting it and being asymptomatic because he had the shot. So, these guys are going to hurt themselves, and create a wrong competitive advantage against themselves by not getting inoculated against this if they're playing football. I mean, everyone should have the right to choose, but when you're football, the NFL is a dictatorship, and we know that Roger Goodell is a dictator, and it's a dictatorship, and that's just the way it is. But if you want to be a part of it, you better get yourself right.
Well, it's not just a dictatorship; it's a privilege. There's 1,000 athletes that wish they had the chance. Guys like you who played in college, guys who played in big colleges that never got a chance to play at this level. So, it's not just your athleticism gives you an opportunity, but it's a privilege when you make it that far. and get to play in that league. So that's how they look at it. Anyways, we're going to wrap up now. On Monday night, we have another guest. Go ahead, Nate. Who we got coming in on Monday?
Well, we're not sure. We still got a couple guys lined up, so we're just trying to confirm. But we're going to definitely talk. We got the NBA draft going on tonight, so we're going to recap the NBA draft, and we're also definitely going to talk a little bit about the Lake Show. And it seems like old Russ is going out to Hollywood and is going to play with LeBron, and the Lakers showed, and we talked about it before, they weren't gonna run it back with that same roster, and they had to do something. I just don't know if this was the right move to make. I've always been a Russ fan, but let's be honest, LeBron's their point guard, so it's kind of like they have 2 point guards. Now the good thing is LeBron can play other positions, but it's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic plays out.
I think if there's any one player who can adjust his game and be kind of a chameleon, it would be LeBron. And if there's any one player that carries the respect that could get Russ to adjust his game, it's LeBron. So I think it would be a good marriage overall. You saw Westbrook played well with in Washington. He played well down there. I mean, like you said, he's never really been the problem, and we all were sitting there saying, Harden's going to spoil the Nets, and it turned out a good thing they had him with the fact that Irving and Durant didn't play for most of the year. So,
you need to have talent. You've got to have talent, and you've got to have superstars to win in the NBA and to beat these teams, in the playoffs. I mean, that's proven fact. And Russ wants to win. There's no doubt. I mean, he wanted to win at OKC. He wanted to win in Houston, and I know he didn't play his best in the playoffs for Washington, but he had some good games throughout the season and meshed pretty well with Bradley Beal. So I think he'll do well in LA, and I think it's a good move. I think they're going to have to do more. I think they're going to have to get somebody else. They need some more shooters on the outside. So we'll see what happens, but I'm looking forward to checking out the draft tonight and seeing who goes where.
Well, Russ has the greatest ability of all, availability. He's always there, so you can't replace that. All right, everybody, we're going to say goodnight now. This is the Safety and the Sportswriter Show with Knoxville Nate and Big Joe. Thank you for Brian Rosser for coming on and making our show tonight. We appreciate him, and we'll definitely have him back. Everybody have a great weekend. We will see you on Monday.
Adios.